Thank you so much for chatting
My
to us
pleasure.
today. Now, you're here for Robinson Crusoe.
That's right, we're producing Robinson Crusoe at the Cliffs Pavilion, which is very exciting, and business is fantastic, and Brian Conley is returning.
That is even more exciting.
Because he's always brilliant, and I've been working with Brian for many, many years, and he's just a brilliant artist, a brilliant comic, proper comic who has the audience in fits.
Yeah, and he just loves panto, doesn't he?
Adores panto. I don't think he's missed a year ever, really. No. I mean, we started doing pantomime 20 years ago or something ridiculous with Dan LaRue and all in the old days. And it all came about when we were doing a pantomime in Southampton, and Dudley Moore was going to come over and play Buttons in Cinderella, and Dudley Moore got ill. And Paul Elliott, the producer at the time, said, let's get Brian Conley to step in. And Brian stepped in and played Buttons, and Dan LaRue was in the show, and Brian hasn't stopped ever since.
No,
he's brilliant, Brian. Brilliant, Brian. There you go.
And Buttons seems to be like his most...
Buttons is his favourite.
Yeah,
his favourite cat. But then, we've morphed it into Robinson Crusoe and lots of other shows as well. And Dick Whittington he's done before and things. So he's brilliant, whatever he does. A funny man's funny. Whatever he does.
So tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into producing?
It's funny because I was just thinking today as I arrived in Southend, this is where I started my career. I was in rep at the Palace Theatre in Westcliff with Chris Dunham, who used to run the theatre there for many, many years in the late 70s. And I did a production of Joseph there and Royal Hunt of the Sun, and I had a great time. So it was really early rep days here in the lovely little Palace Theatre when it was a rep in those days, and it was a premier rep in those days in the country, where there were repertory theatres all over the country. There are a handful left now; they've all gone, unfortunately. So it's funny coming back to the theatre that we now run, the Cliffs Pavilion and the Palace Westcliff, all these years later, 40 years later, whatever it is, 35 years later, and what a coincidence, having started here, that now we're doing great things in this venue and loving Southend, having great success with it. So I started off as a performer for many years, starting at the Palace Westcliff, and then touring in lots of musicals and the Rocky Horror Show, which I did here. For 2 years. I did the Rocky Horror Show tour, Frankfurter, of course, the best part. For 2 years, 85, 86, and in fact we're having a reunion in October, because the cast of that tour was 30 years ago, and David Ian, who is a very famous producer now, was my Rocky.
Was it?
So we're having a reunion to celebrate all the people that were in that tour 30 years ago. How the time's gone. I'll get you some photographs. It'll be weird. Great. Looking forward to seeing everybody. It'll be fantastic.
We saw it here actually at the Cliffs only a couple of weeks ago.
That's a newer tour, but I did the tour. The tour, when I did it, was a lot of audience participation. The audience threw things, shouted things. It was a bit like a pantomime.
No, I was going to say, not unlike panto.
No, absolutely. But I've always loved pantomime. When I was very young, I started performing in pantomimes, and it's always been a great love of mine. Then I started directing pantomimes for the big pantomime company at the time, E&B, and then they said to me, come and produce the pantomime. So I thought, this is a great move on from performing, because as you get older it gets more difficult to play those juvenile roles and you have to find another life. So I did. I went into producing the pantomimes, and then Nick Thomas bought E&B and created Qdos, and then we became the biggest pantomime company ever. And
it is huge, isn't it?
Massive.
You've got like a massive
24 production, massive warehouses in the north, in Beverley and Scarborough. With hundreds and thousands of costumes and sets and things, and 24 venues this year we have, from Aberdeen to Plymouth. So it's a massive business, and it takes all year to prepare. I do all the casting and the admin, as well as producing half the shows with Michael Harrison, who was actually producing this show this year in Southend with Brian, and it was great. But looking forward to a great year this year.
So when do you literally start preparing for next year's panto?
Yeah, we started already.
Have you?
Yeah, and some artists are on 3-year contracts, so we kind of move them around the country. But we're already planning 17-18 and 18-19. It's bizarre when you work towards Christmas, because the year kind of races away with you. But as soon as the season's up and running, we're starting on the next one.
Right, and how do you pair your stars, or how do you decide which stars are going to be with who?
You kind of think that artist will work well with that, and then you try it, and then like Brian and Gok have worked together, I think it's their 3rd year now or something, and they just love each other. And it's a great combination. When you find a great combination like that, it's like Julian Clary and Lee Mead. They work brilliantly well together as a partnership. And they're both at the Palladium this year, but with a lot of other big stars. But that's a great combination too. You just find artists that gel together, and if that works, you keep them together as long as you can, because that chemistry, it's like John Barrowman and the Crankies. Their chemistry in Glasgow for years is legendary, and they're in Birmingham this year. But just something about the electricity between artists, and if it works, we just hang on to it.
Yeah,
and use it.
Are there any pitfalls to being a producer of a panto?
It gets more and more difficult to cast and find stars and find new stars that can perform in pantomime, because pantomime is a very difficult thing, and it's twice a day. It needs a lot of stamina, and a lot of people don't have the stamina to actually get out there and spend the whole day in the theatre, which is what the artists do.
Because didn't Gok come to Qdos originally and ask to be in a panto?
Yes. I mean, I can't remember whether I called his agent and. Or he asked us. I can't remember. It's such a long time ago now.
But I think I remember seeing from the
documentary. That documentary in Birmingham.
That how difficult he found it.
Yes. I mean, we had a lot of meetings and things, and but it just turned out brilliantly. It's a great marriage, and his first one was fabulous in Birmingham, but also he loves it too. But it's not. It's a difficult style of performance to actually get right, and a lot of actors can't break the fourth wall and can't talk to the audience, which is why Brian's so brilliant, because he comes from a variety background. He understands that whole thing of and pantomime is the interaction between an audience and an artist, which is most actors never get to experience, and some people just can't cope with it and they seize up. But when there's 2,000 people shouting at you, you need to shout back at them. And some people just can't do that. But it's exhausting. It's an exhausting schedule, 4 or 5 weeks, twice a day. It's hard work, really hard work. So finding people that have the talent to do it and the ability to do it is tough. And it doesn't get any easier. That's the bit that's difficult every year, finding new stars. Because a lot of the great stars are getting older now and retiring, and we've got to replace them somehow.
But it's something I think that stars want to be in nowadays, isn't it? I think in the old days it used to be a thing of, we're going to a panto, there's that poor old person, I know,
it did go through a phase like that. But we've turned all that around now, and now it's the thing to do. So I do get a lot of calls from people saying, can I work for you? Can I do panto? Because people now, the shows are now very big musical style shows, and as you've seen here for the past few years, and they're much, the standard is much higher than it ever used to be, and so we're moving it forward and pushing it forward. Lots of new special effects and illusions. We've got Twins FX who do illusions and things in shows, so they're becoming like West End musicals now.
Yeah, and are there plenty of those effects and illusions in Robinson Crusoe?
Yes, we've got everything here this year. I mean, but it starts off with a great story and a great cast, and then there's always the special effects and things flying over the audience and all that sort of thing, which we'll have. But you need great artists who will give you a great time, and that's what people love in Southend. They want to laugh. So you've got one of the greatest comics of all time, Brian Conley.
Yeah, we love him.
And Gok, who is very modern and never off the telly and becoming iconic.
Yes.
He's just but also loves the genre. He loves pantomime, and it works so well for him because he's great at talking to the audience. He's great at talking to people, and he's a great communicator, which is what you need to be in pantomime.
Fabulous. Well, I wish you all the luck for
Thank
this
you very
year,
much.
and we look
It's going to be a great season.
It.
Thank you. Good enjoy.